welcome to the stage journalist and activist Shaun King.
Vermont, how are you? I'm glad to be here with you today. Early this morning, in the middle of Brooklyn, New York, my wife and our kids loaded up our car and drove 6 hours from Brooklyn to Burlington, and then here to the Capitol to be here with you this weekend because we love Bernie Sanders. And I'm so honored to be able to introduce Bernie to you today. First, because Bernie Sanders is a hero to me and he's a hero to you. Bernie is the living embodiment of what it means to actually live out your values, to walk your talk. I tell people that right now we could go to any website for anybody running for president, and all of those websites are amazing. They'll all inspire you, because now that they're running for president, the candidates believe in every good and perfect idea imaginable. But Bernie's website is not just a brochure for who he hopes to be someday. He's not just telling us what he'd do if he would become president. Every idea that's on Bernie's website emanates from the life that he actually lives right now. Listen, every principle and policy on Bernie's website is rooted in what he's been fighting for his entire life. For me, and I hope for you, the greatest indication of what you'll actually do as president isn't what you put on your website. It's not what you promise on the campaign trail. The greatest indication of who you'll fight for and what you'll fight for as president is who and what you've been fighting for your entire life. That's why we love Bernie, because we see who and what he's been fighting for all of these years. And listen, not a single political leader in this country has more consistently fought for everyday people and their rights and their dignity and their safety and their future like Bernie Sanders, and nobody knows that better than Vermont. Listen, Bernie is what it looks like for a young civil rights activist and organizer to grow up and one day join the government, but never actually lose his sensibilities and spirit as a fighter against the status quo. I've said it before, but Bernie has been giving the man hell for over 70 years, right? Bernie's a trendsetter. This week, I hope you saw it, when Bernie stood up for McDonald's workers this week, working side by side with them. They invited Bernie to stand with them. And when he did it, half of the other people running for president followed suit, because Bernie sets the trends. For months, Bernie has been standing with the drivers of Uber and Lyft as their founders and executives reap billions and billions of dollars, but their drivers aren't even making minimum wage. And Bernie is standing with those drivers. Bernie consistently has been standing with the workers of Walmart as they work day in and day out, owned by a company with owners, a family that is literally the richest family in our country, but most of them literally cannot pay their bills. And Bernie stands by them. Listen, Bernie Sanders is a bulldog for what he believes in. He's a bulldog for workers' rights. He's a bulldog for fair pay, for equal pay. and for wages that people can actually live off of. Bernie right now is a bulldog for the environment, for clean water, for clean air, for the preservation of public lands. He's a bulldog for civil rights and human rights, not just in the United States, but all over the world. And he's been speaking out against war for over 50 years. I was proud to hear Ben say it because Bernie spoke out against Vietnam. He voted against the disastrous war in Iraq, and he's speaking out today against the gross actions going on right now in Yemen, and Bernie's speaking out against a foolish war that it seems Trump wants to start with Iran. Listen, we need an anti-war president, and Bernie has been fighting for peace his entire life. And it's great for me to be able to brag about Bernie to some people that actually get him, that understand him, and really understand what he means to this state and what he's done right here in Vermont as a leader, and why he is literally the single most popular senator in America, because you know his character and you know his record. Listen, no single senator in the nation has consistently had approval ratings as high as Bernie Sanders with the voters of Vermont. Year after year, including this year, he's the single most popular senator in the nation. And not only is Bernie the longest serving independent in the entire history of the United States, but for 21 straight years, he's never received less than 63% of the vote in Vermont, because you have Bernie's back. And this story really has not been told nationally, and it's going to take you telling it and letting people know, because every single year that Bernie was mayor of Burlington, his approval ratings went up every single year. Every single time he was reelected, all 4 times, he was elected by a larger margin than he was the previous term. Now, the first time he was elected, it wasn't hard to win by a larger margin because he just won by 10 votes. But the margin grew by thousands of votes every year after that. And for just a moment, as I close, I want to brag not just to all of you here, but to the whole world about Bernie's life of leadership in Vermont. Because so much of what Bernie has fought for here in Vermont was really rooted in his love of Dr. Martin Luther King and what Dr. King was fighting for at the end of his life. Listen, do the research and find out and see for yourself that at the end of his life, Dr. King was fighting for workers' rights. He was fighting for fair pay. He was fighting for affordable housing. And he was fighting to end senseless wars. And when Bernie moved to Vermont, he tried his best to pick up that mantle and run with it, and you've supported him every step of the way. Listen, we need you to make sure these stories are told everywhere. Because I regularly hear people ask, what has Bernie actually done? And Bernie has done so much across the years, but he's too humble to brag about it and tell the story himself, so we have to tell these stories for him. Listen, there are 2 beautiful stories that I want to leave you with. In 1984, when Bernie was the mayor of Burlington, he started funding something called the Burlington Community Land Trust. And he started doing it just $200,000 at a time. And the idea was that the city would partner with families in creative ways so they could have affordable housing. And today, that trust that really started being funded when Bernie was mayor has a portfolio of 3,000 affordable homes worth over $300 million. Bernie Sanders got that started. It is literally the single largest home ownership trust in the entire nation. And the families who live in those homes are 10 times less likely to ever default on their mortgages. And these are the types of creative ideas that we would see from President Bernie Sanders. When Bernie was mayor, he wrote laws mandating that new apartments that were built had to allot at least 25% of their units for affordable housing. And he made sure that those people who built those units guaranteed they were affordable for 99 years. Mayor Bernie Sanders did that. Now that's more than any other city in the nation. And when Bernie started doing that as mayor, it was a novel idea. But now almost every big city in the country is now doing what Bernie was doing in the mid-1980s. In 1986, when 336 residents of the Northgate Apartments in Burlington risked being evicted or displaced when the owner was going to double their rent, Bernie literally said, and this is a quote, "Over my dead body will these residents be displaced." And, you know, we laugh when the president calls him Crazy Bernie because sometimes he is a little crazy, but crazy in a good way. Because in 1986, he really helped lead an insurrection with the residents of that apartment complex, and he raised the money for the city to buy that apartment complex. And he started something so that over the course of 20 years, the 336 residents of the Northgate Apartments would actually own the entire apartment complex. And right now, it is one of the only resident-owned, controlled, and managed apartment complexes in the entire country, and Bernie Sanders helped make that happen. When people ask you, what has Bernie done? Remind them that when he was mayor of Burlington, it had the lowest unemployment rate of any city in America. Remind them that right now in Vermont, this state has the lowest unemployment rate of any state in the nation. And Bernie Sanders has helped create the climate and the culture that's attractive to businesses that have provided many of you with the jobs you have today. Right now, Vermont has the 6th highest life expectancy rate. Almost every year for the past 10 years, Vermont has been rated the 1st or 2nd safest state in the nation. Almost every year for the past 10 years, Vermont's public schools have been ranked in the top 5 in the nation. And Vermont, listen, Vermont spends the 2nd most money per pupil of any state and has the best teacher-student ratio in the nation. And here's the thing, Bernie knows what I know, and it's why we need to elect him as president. Bernie knows that when a state has affordable housing, when a state has good jobs, when a state has low unemployment, when children have good schools, when the air is clean and the water is clean, guess what else goes down? Crime goes down. Despair goes down. Hopelessness goes down. And over 30 years ago, Bernie said these words, and it's a quote, and I'm so touched by it because we are living really in his prediction. Bernie said, quote, "Maybe, just maybe, in Vermont, we will strike a little bit of a spark that might spread across the country." Listen, Vermont, you made him your mayor, you made him your your congressman. You've made him your senator. But Vermont, I believe it's time that you take the spark that was started here. I believe it's time that you take that spark and help make Bernie Sanders the next president of the United States. Together, we can make that happen. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our brother, our hero, and the future president of the United States, Senator Bernie Sanders.